Hey, what's good guys? This is Enemy Stand User here. Welcome to my review of Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 211, Ripen. This is a fantastic chapter. Today we have gotten a lot of information regarding the Culling game specifics and tons of details that are super important. So for this review, I hope you don't mind me explaining a lot of Culling game information just to make all the info clear, going over the rules, the players, the incidents, etc. But this chapter was insanely good. It was a really good treat to read, and it seems we have entered into the end game of the Culling games, and something really big is going down. So my brothers, let's enter the chaos that is the Culling games. It's finally happened. After 1,000 years, Japan has awakened once again, and the Japanese archipelago via the 10 major colonies have quote-unquote broken in, and the entire nation has begun its preparation, crossing to the other shore. All of Japan is processed in one single wave of change, you can call it. But at this moment, on the 16th of November, Tengen is in the hands of Kenjaku, and it's as if a silent chaos has erupted. Non-sources more prone to the supernatural have picked up a very strange, very bad vibe, and it's just a fun little detail here, but we can actually see the waiter from chapter 12 is shown here too, so it's like we've gone full circle from one incident to the birth of another. It's really cool to see. We are now in real time during the manga, sometime after Tengen's capture, the noon of the 16th. Our sorcerers, including Yuji, Megumi, Takaba, and Angel, talk to Maki about the state of Japan. It's important to remember the positions of our characters because Maki is actually a very important character right now, because now Maki is being used as a sort of go-between for the sorcerers since colony barriers trap players with cursed energy. Maki has no such cursed energy, so she can travel between each barrier no problem. And as further support, a sorcerer like Yui Yui assists Meimei's younger brother, and he can teleport long distances and stay out of colony, so he also acts as a kind of go-between informant. While Maki is in Tokyo Colony 1, several things are brought up regarding the Culling game status, and first and foremost, Kenjaku has defeated Yuki Tsukumo, captured Lord Tengen, and left the Jujutsu world in a terrible state. Remember, without Tengen, Jujutsu sorcerers have no protective barriers or security, so Tengen is essentially like a lifeline of stability. Now, it's terrible enough Yuki died. She potentially could have been a huge asset and help for the sorcerers, but from Maki's words, she straight up implies that Kenjaku can't be defeated through conventional means. And that's a crazy statement when considering Yuki and Yuta are around the same level, they're the same caliber sorcerer. So it's really up for anyone who tries Kenjaku. Now that truly is a crazy thought, and I'm really here for it. So a positive is that our team still has Prison Realm, but on a sad note, Chozo is very bummed out about how things went with Yuki in the battle with Kenjaku. However, he still possesses the back of Prison Realm. So Gojo's unsealment is a factor not yet lost. There is still hope in this scenario. And while hearing all this from Maki, Yuji and Megumi are just in awe of the Maki in front of them. It's only been around 4 days, and Maki is totally different. It's actually cool how they noticed that change, because her demeanor is a lot more vicious and less moody than she was, but she's still the same Maki. Moving on to actual Culling game info, while Kenjaku has seized Tengen, the assimilation or the merger with humanity hasn't made any drastic changes as of yet, at least not on the surface. In effect, sorcerers can reject Tengen's merger with cursed energy, but the more vulnerable non-sorcerers are susceptible to this evolution, and at this very moment they are experiencing the start of this conveyance. But this is like the calm before the storm, because Japan is functioning normal with all things considered. We then transition into the actual Culling game rules and receive an explanation on why the sorcerers haven't used their points yet. So let's actually take this time to quickly consider every Culling game rule and the effect it plays now. Up to this point, there are 10 Culling game rules, and by the end of the chapter, there are an additional 2, making 12. Now these rules may be a tad bit intricate and it might be confusing at first, but as you see, the rules are designed for the games to continue to function and discourage idleness. Remember, some players don't awaken in the colonies, but because of the binding vows and conditions set by Kenjaku, they are forced to participate and enter the games or they die. If their points stay the same, they die. Privy to the information from this week, a curse technique removal means altering the brain and the end result is death. Only those like Maki with zero curse energy are free from such rules. To combat the Culling games, our sources came up with a plan to handle the games. An effective strategy is to work around the rules itself and use the point system to make 4 different rules to stabilize the games. Proposed rule number 1 is completed, and this is the transfer of points between players, and this rule allows the survival of players who wish a non-lethal outcome of both rule 4 and rule 8. So now that their points change, they no longer have to kill and don't risk curse technique removal. Proposed rule number 2, incomplete. Well, as of this moment in the chapter. But this rule allows entry and exit of colonies. So this gives players a chance to travel freely around Japan, but in effect, still need to participate in the games via updating their points. And proposed rule number 3, also incomplete. This rule allows electrical signals and communication outside the colonies. Proposed rule number 4. This rule allows withdrawal from the Culling games. I may be reading it wrong, but this rule was technically quote-unquote spoiled by chapter 190 by Gege, as he hadn't intended to reveal the substitution or 100 points trade yet. But we understand this lets a player use 100 points to substitute themselves out of the game. Now, if you still follow me, the new proposed rules 2 and 3 are very difficult because both the non-entry and exit of colonies and the blocked communication of colonies are the results of the barrier walls themselves, not the Culling game rules. This is more like a game system mechanic, like how if a player answers the Kogane's question, they spawn in the air. So regarding the barriers, even if they add those new rules, the barrier walls themselves could still repel them. This is why the teams may never have added any rules yet. In truth, the sources already have ways around that. Maki can enter and exit colonies, and Yui Yui communicates outside while traveling all around Japan to fast travel with Maki, basically. So they can communicate and use Maki to go in and out. Alright, okay, back to the actual chapter. Our team focuses on the proposed rule 4, the withdrawal from the Culling games. And now currently Yuta and Hikari's team have transferred their points to Megumi. So with 359 points, he can choose a new rule. Initially, when Megumi proposes the plain rule of just allowing players to withdraw from the games, the Kogane instantly rejected the rule due to it conflicting with rule 7. So instead, Megumi proposes the substitution of another player in exchange to withdraw from the Culling games. This was also rejected. In response, the Kogane revises Megumi's proposal and adds that a player may withdraw from the Culling games by inviting a new player from outside the colony as a substitute and spending 100 points. This is acceptable. It's easy to jump the gun, kind of like how Yuji was thinking, and agree, but Megumi considers that when a player withdraws, a new player enters, resulting in the same amount of players. But then if 20 players die just for those 100 points, just for one person to leave, Megumi knows that logic conflicts with rule 7. So now it's just established that the longevity of the games and the purpose of the games are in conflict. Finally, Megumi just yields to this new proposal. And new rule number 11 is added. A player may withdraw from the Culling games by inviting a new player from outside the colony as a substitute and spending 100 points. And we see all of our favorite Culling game players reacting to this news. I really appreciate this panel considering the oddity of this arc and all the craziness. We really do got some goated characters. Moving on, Maki is sent to bring Tsumiki to Tokyo Colony 1 and a couple of things are revealed. First, Tsumiki is a awakened sorcerer who has not yet declared participation in the games. She is not in any colony, So if she were to withdraw without participation, either the rule wouldn't work or Tsumiki would die after withdrawing. It's actually insanely big brain Megumi would even consider that at all. But briefly, Maki explains when she brings Tsumiki to the barrier, they will be separated like how Yuji and Megumi did. Of course, Maki might be unfamiliar with that process, but it's still funny how that glitch affected their concern for Tsumiki, cause you really would need a parachute if you spawn 50 stories in the air. Later in the evening, things go smoothly. Maki has now reached Tsumiki and on their way back to have Ichiji act as proxy in Tsumiki's place. I actually love that it's Ichiji doing this because it shows his general concern for Megumi's sister, and I mean he was probably the manager who looked after her condition in the hospital. So it just goes full circle. Ichiji explains Tsumiki's situation and reassures her that everything's fine because he actually used to be under training to become a sorcerer. I think we already knew that, but it's very cool seeing this and how Gege snuck a mini flashback of young Ichiji with his older senpai Gojo. But basically, Gojo's tactlessness and his rude nature and comments toward Ichiji's ability as a sorcerer saved his life. Instead of being some half-assed sorcerer and dying to some curse on the field, Ichiji did what he could and supported Jujutsu as an auxiliary manager, and he's still with us today. We then cut back to Tsumiki as she apparently declares her entry into the colony and spawns in a extremely convenient place, like right in front of Yuji and Megumi. Almost too lucky. It ain't even been 1 second and something is already amiss. But everything is going very smoothly. Tsumiki acts just like how you'd expect. I honestly enjoy her very charming and sweet demeanor. I mean, it's just wholesome. You can't not love Tsumiki. So the group has their introductions, and it's nice to see everything working out. Even Yuji and Angel share a moment just being each other. So finally, when Tsumiki is offered the choice to leave, everything is in order. We got the points, we got the substitute, we got Tsumiki. Tsumiki finally drops the act and tells the Kogane to add the entry and exit colony rule. This of course was not the plan and the group is shook. Tsumiki looks at Megumi with an awfully sinister glare and Megumi ends the chapter in a panic, asking, "Who are you?" Yeah, that turned dark real fast. Tsumiki is not what she seems. My immediate red flag is how she spawned into the colony. I would have just brushed that off, but the way Yuji and Megumi dwelled on Tsumiki's insane luck in that moment tells us something. The rule Tsumiki added as well was one that on the surface is kind of useless because barriers might as well negate travel anyway if that theory is true. But it kind of feels like Tsumiki is undermining the rules itself if she is indeed wasting 100 points. If the rule applies and the colony's open, dozens of crazy strong Culling game sorcerers and tons of curses will be let loose in Japan, and it's just some insane potential. But regarding this new Tsumiki, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if not only was she something like a game master, but also inhabited by another sorcerer. Honestly, that outcome is very crazy, but it's what I'd expect at this point, and I'd love to see something like that. Just hear me out. Throughout Tsumiki's time of being cursed, we don't know what she's undergone during that process. Obviously, as an awakened player, either Kenjaku had transfigured her or prepared a cursed object for her to ingest. It's likely the latter, considering she's hinted as a modern player. One thing that really sparks my interest is how we never actually saw her declare participation in the games. We just cut to her very, very lucky spawn. And if that spawn was not luck, Tsumiki may have some control over that Culling game mechanic, implying she could be the Culling game master. Now, it's all just pure speculation. But Tsumiki not being Tsumiki is huge. Their big goal was to save Tsumiki, and now it seems she doesn't need saving. Worse yet, if she's a different person, whether it be in cahoots with Kenjaku or corrupted by an ancient reincarnated sorcerer, she would be one of the angels' targets as well. It's just a lot to think about, and it'd be really bad, especially if she's some sort of antagonist that truly would break Megumi. He is not ready for that outcome. Really, I'd like that more if Tsumiki was still herself, but was tainted by the influence of the Culling games and cursed energy, because power could change people, and Tsumiki could be the result of that effect. Overall, this chapter was really good. One thing I'll say is that we did not see Yuta in any form today, which is kind of concerning and kind of strange considering, you know, Yuta got like half the points, but we'll see him soon. To me, this chapter was like way better than last week, and it showed me Gege is indeed still cooking. And I'd love to hear you guys' awesome input on this chapter in the comments below. We're finally getting back into some really heavy twists and reveals, so soon we're gonna see some huge stuff. But Gege is on fire right now. This has been Enemy Stand User, and I'll see you awesome guys in the next one. Bye-bye.